Welcome back to This Week in Indies, as we strive and thirst for the knowledge of getting better. Not many things can replace practical experience. And when you don't have any, you turn to the people who do. And it's through their generosity of time and knowledge that you yourself start to get that experience. And then someone comes along at the place you were at, and then the shoe becomes on the other foot. So today, on our round table, we're going to discuss and explore the roles of the mentor in both seeking and being one. Then Seal Cannon will come along with the Indie Connection that will recommend books that are similar to The Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo. And finally, Obsession, Vampires, and Danger. Hayward and Anderson are on the case as we explore this incredible short story series by A.F. Stewart in the final 5 minutes. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite beverage, and let's get to talking about these things and more as we welcome you to This Week in Indies with your host, Joe Compton. Hello, everybody. Welcome to This Week in Indies. Yes, it is I, Joe Compton, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we've got a great show ahead for you. And I just wanted to quickly say Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there who's a mother, who has a mother, who, all that wonderful stuff. And so Happy Mother's Day, and welcome to the show. And as you can see, I've got a good panel here ready to talk a little bit about the road we've been on through our mentoring and how we mentor and who we've been mentored by and all that wonderful stuff. So let's just get to the introductions and then we'll get to talking. So Anita, why don't you start us off, please?
Okay, hi, I'm Anita Stewart. I write under A.F. Stewart, all things dark and stabby, fantasy and horror and poetry. I also host 2 shows, Words to Kill here on the Go Indie Now network, and Between the Pages Book Chat, which has an episode coming up later today. And I also run a store, 3 stores over on Zazzle selling merchandise, various sci-fi and fantasy and horror things and writing stuff.
Nice. Who's on the show today?
It's the show's one of the authors from the book Dark Tides 8 from Crystal Lake Publishing.
Cool. Awesome. We'll look forward to that. All right, Adam?
Hi, my name's Adam Gaffen. I write near future hope punk science fiction with strong LGBTQ representation. I have a new book coming out in a month, The Heart of Space, which is a collection of short fiction, and I have a story in an anthology that releases tomorrow.
Nice. Awesome. All right, Jim?
I am Jim Nettles. I write nonfiction and a bunch of stuff as myself. And then I do a lot of fiction as James P. McDonald and a bunch of other names. I am one of the hosts and one of the founders over at the Continual Convention, where we run a bunch of stuff online as well. We just hit our 3rd anniversary and pushing 800 and something shows in 3 years. And I founded Author Essentials, which is all about workshops and the business side of being a creative and all that kind of cool, fun stuff. Business director for the Speculative Fiction Academy, talking about some of this fun stuff. And I've got my own show called Creating Prose. And happily, that book, this book, after 3 years worth of hell, has finally decided to come out, which is all about fairy folklore in film.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, you've been talking about that one for a while.
Yeah, we've only expected to come out about 28 times over the last 3 years, 4 years, whatever it's been.
Well, I'm glad it's finally here. All right, Alexander.
Hey guys, I'm Alexandra Gideon. As you all know by now, my writing style can best be summed up by the phrase, and many people die. I'm a author of fantasy, sci-fi, and horror now. My series, the books The Law, if I can point to it, first book, Web of Crimson, and the second book are out in that one as well. It's through Falstaff Books. I'm also working on a Kill Villa series. It's going to be kind of like contemporary fantasy, very much, dealing with LGBT, trauma, a lot of things there. Lighthearted until it's not.
Nice. All right, and Madeline says hello, everybody. Hi, Madeline. Uh, awesome. Well, you know, I I was thinking about this topic for the week, and I'm curious just to start the conversation off. Uh, who and how have you experienced the mentor relationship before? Or who have you? Do you have a mentor in your creative work? Is it a remote mentor, somebody who you grew up with reading or you're watching or something to that effect, or is it a direct mentor? How has the mentor relationship been in your life?
Well, I have a couple of authors that inspired me. Ray Bradbury, in particular, was a big influence on my work. I haven't actually had any direct mentoring. I had some group sort of mentoring when I started publishing through a site called gather.com, which is sadly no longer online. But I learned a lot through authors. We were discussing, grouping, critiquing each other's stuff. So that was very helpful for me when I first started out.
That's awesome.
Well, so I'll throw out there because again, mentoring is really if it's done right, is a two-way thing. Because no matter what, no matter how far long you've been doing anything, there's always things you can learn from experience or know how things are changing and things that are going on. I mean, my mother was an English teacher, and so I grew up underneath the red pen. And I came from a line of teachers and academics on one side and business people on the other. In terms of getting into writing, I always had teachers and things that were basically loved or hated the way I wrote, style, all that kind of stuff. But again, if nothing else, the idea of spinning and BSing and then getting into publication and media meant I had mentors in the form of editors, mentors in the forms of other writers that we were working with and collaborating with. When I got into fiction, it's always been sort of a growing thing. And there's, in a lot of the other areas that I work, I have mentors that I've had for my entire career that I still am tight with and am friends with. And it's long developed into a two-way thing. It's never just the, hey, I need a favor or I need help or I need an idea or whatever the case it is. That relationship grows over time and should become a two-way thing. And I mean, I've done things where, again, I've been a consultant most of my career and other things as well, which means there are times I get that I'm on both sides of it. But I think that's really the important part, is recognizing if you get into a good mentor relationship, it really should become two-way. And because the questions you ask or the help you need is the sort of thing that a lot of the time, we have that idea, like mentors, like parents have all the answers. And a lot of the time they've got their experience to share, but it's not necessarily an answer as to where things stand or what's going on. And I think that's really kind of the important part that I've learned.
It's all awesome.
Yeah. And it's, for me, it's been, mentoring kind of as and when, like Jim was saying, it's a two-way street. And at first, the traffic is more one way than the other, but as you go forward, then it starts to balance out. But you can pick it up from anywhere. You can pick up, tips and ideas and corrections from anywhere. Jim was talking about growing up under the red pen, and I remember my sophomore and junior English teacher. He instilled in me, my hatred of four-letter words, very, only, just, and that, because he would fail somebody if you put very in an English paper. So you learned quickly to avoid certain words, and it strengthens your writing. But yeah, the idea that it has to be just a person or a couple of people. I don't think that's, I don't think that's the case. It's really it's really a group effort, especially with the indie community.
So I've had some fantastic mentors, all of which are people that I very much intended to be my mentors. When I was 19, I showed up at Con Carolinas in Charlotte, North Carolina with 3 bags full of books, ready to meet all of the authors I knew were going to be there, and very determined that they were going to be my friends and show me how to do this thing.
You will be my friend, or I will stalk you, right?
He does stalk. I mean,
one of them are. So, but I will say, the one that stands out, and I've wrote a blog post about it, is the one who is on my arm here. So this is a tattoo based off of the Lon Tobin Chronicle by David B. Coe. I've had a lot of great mentors. David has been the one I think that has really pushed me the most, because he has, taught me how to write, published me as an editor for Zombies Need Brains, edited me. His daughters edited me. And he was also a reference for my current outside of writing job as an optician, where I'm licensing or I'm apprenticing to be licensed as well. So the man gave me my entire career. He is the reason I make money at all right now. But I've also, I had Faith Hunter, who, if, David is my writing dad, Faith is my writing mom. And, I've had so many great people that I've met. And the thing is that everyone that you meet, especially if they're somewhere ahead of you that you want to be, that person can be a mentor for you if you will make them one. And that's kind of the things. People are like, people like come on and they're willing to be their mentor, and I'm like, that's not how I see it. No, I'm going to make you a mentor because you've got something I want, and I'm going to finagle you into showing me how to do it. And that's always been my mentality. And
that's an interesting aspect of it, and I think all of you kind of touched on it a little bit. I'm curious if the mentoring aspect of your careers in your life were more of an accident than a seeking aspect of it. Like you were looking for something, or was it you were looking for something specific and you went and found the person that you knew you could trust to ask about that specificity. Sorry. But was it more of an accidental thing where you came across a group or something that you kind of walked into and you go, you know what? This is my group. I found it. I feel comfortable here. I feel comfortable asking questions. Is that kind of how you've kind of, been a part of the mentoring aspect of your career?
Yeah, mine was totally accidental in every case. I mean, I stumbled into Gaffen.com. I stumbled into Go Indie Now. I stumbled into all the other groups I have on Facebook. It's just like, okay, well, this looks interesting. Let's try it. And there it is. So, yeah.
I don't know that I can say it was intentional in a lot of cases. In some cases, it was not only not intentional, it was unintended, or in some cases intended to go an entirely different path. But that being said, when you get opportunity to do certain things and you start to find those people, because one of the hard parts is to find mentors because you can get somebody who is a good mentor for you that's not a good mentor for somebody else, or you may find somebody who is a fantastic mentor for somebody else but not for you. And this is one of the things I've run into a lot over the years, is just the same thing in terms of people you can work with and deal with and partner with. And so when you're younger, and I mean, like Alex is, that I'm definitively going to make this happen. There are absolutely times that if you want something to happen, you're going to have to take that level of an approach of not stalking, Alex, but making an effort and being there and being present and showing real intent and, real earnestness in what you're trying to do. And I think if you do that, you're much more likely to find and attract mentors that are a good fit. And, one of the things that you find is in the writing community, for the most part, it is an extraordinarily welcoming and great community. That being said, like any community, there are also people that you're like, not for me. You may come across somebody that is the absolute outright asshole. It happens. Sometimes that's me. But, regardless, you find those people that you can work with and that you do want to work with and you do want to partner with. And sometimes that's about style and writing and language and things you learn from. Other times it's literally, how do I learn to be a better person? And I think that's kind of the hard part. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you're not looking for it, you can accidentally stumble into some great things, but you're not even going to stumble into those things unless you're at least looking at some level.
Now, Jim, I would never stalk. But thank you for leaving your curtains open. I love how you've rearranged the room.
Yeah, thanks.
You can find some fantastic people that can really help you by accident. There are times where you don't know when you've met someone who's going to be really important to you and everything that you're doing. It's one of the things I love about Dragon Con and how big it is and all the people that show up. Because sometimes you're having a conversation with someone and they don't seem like they're really anyone to pay attention to, and you then find out, hey, that was the track director of a con I've been trying to get into for 5 years, and because he liked me from our conversation, now I'm going to that con. There's all kinds of things that can happen there, and you can someone that can have that effect and can really teach you something that's really going to help. One of the things though is that I think something that I've seen other writers have an issue with is you have this idea of like there can be that one person that like that's all that I need. Like if I could have Jim Butcher, or if I could have Terry Brooks be my mentor, I'd know everything that I would need to. And it's like, no, those people can't. I mean, I had a conversation with Terry Brooks and he was like, I can mentor someone on how to write now, but I could not tell you anything about the business because you don't get into the business the way I did. And it's like, you need to find all of your people and be open to all of the people in all of the aspects. There are authors that I really, look to and trust for mentoring and for like editing and for advice on the writing aspect. And then there are the others that are on the business aspect. And a lot of times those two are kind of separate. They're the writers I'm like, I'm going to write like them, but sell like them. And like, that's where that like piecemeal who I want to bring in to, show me the things that, I want and how to get to, because my career and your career and everyone else's career should not look the same. We all have different goals. You all have different places we want to go. And that's why you need to curate your own little mentor group there.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's definitely been accidental and definitely been, something Kendra says, if I don't ask, you can't say yes. Don't be afraid to ask for the opportunity. Don't be afraid to, jump in with both feet. I mean, years ago, here I am, novice writer, and, barely have anything out there. And I get talking with Kevin Anderson and volunteer to help him edit some of Frank Herbert's old books that he was in the process of redoing to re-release. And this is not an opportunity that would have come along had I not said, hey, I'd love to help you with this. And he said, sure. And like Jim was saying, though, yes, dive in, find out, about, the various groups and the various organizations. And Anita touched on it too. But also don't be afraid to walk away from them. If you're not getting out of it what you need, or if it's just not working for you, don't be afraid to just say, okay, that that was the wrong choice, at least for right now. That was the wrong place for me to be.
That's awesome. Madeline says those I look up as of now involving all that I do absolutely met by accident, and I am 100% thankful for them. And she agreed with Anita when Anita was talking, and I didn't put that up when Anita was talking. So you guys kind of touched on this as well, and I kind of want to transition into it a little bit. The idea of, how you approach people to be mentored or to get advice or to talk to somebody. Have you looked at that internally when somebody approaches you? Has that changed your perspective on how somebody would come to you? How do you feel about when somebody comes to you and wants to be mentored?
Nobody's particularly come to me saying, "Hey, I want to learn stuff from you," but I'm happy to share what what little dribs and drabs of knowledge that I've picked up over the years. I'm perfectly happy to share those. That there's no, I don't have any secrets that, I got to keep this one to myself because if anybody else finds out about it, it's not going to work anymore. I mean, I'm going to share anything that I know, and they can take it or leave it. Advice is a gift. Once you give it to somebody, it's theirs to do with as they please. So,
well, Madeline says, Adam, you've taught me a lot. Just saying, many of you have on here. So,
yes, I've had a lot of fun.
I think that's the thing about it, right? Is that it's indirect, and you don't realize you're mentoring sometimes, and you really are when you say something or talk about something. I mean, every time you guys are on this show, I think you kind of have a little bit of a mentoring role because you're giving knowledge out a little bit, right? So,
well, I mean, and Joe, you've seen me. We've hung out a couple of times. I'm always happy to go sit and run my mouth and pontificate maybe a little bit. But
Jim,
all right, I'm leaving now. But at the same time, I've had, I've been able to do mentor sessions for, a lot of different conventions where it's like, there's still a small part of me that's like, why the hell is anybody coming to listen again? Oh, okay. But I think it's a matter of being willing to be open, and when I need something, I'm fortunate enough to have a fair pool of people these days. I can go and say, I need to meet this person because I have a question or I need a conversation or whatever that needs to happen. And more than likely, I know somebody that can open that door to make that happen. But that's not always been true. I mean, everybody starts at the same ground zero of, I don't know anybody. I have not met anybody. And again, this is kind of that two-way street, willing to be open and willing to go have a conversation is always the thing that's going to make that easier. If you come in going, this is what I need from you, that makes that conversation a little bit harder sometimes. But if it is hey, I just want to sit and have a conversation. I've got questions. Let's talk about it. I think that's the easiest way to open the door on either side.
I think that's something that's important as well, and something like, for like anyone coming to me or to anyone else, always have a conversation with someone first. Make it completely not about your writing, anything that where you're going, anything. Get to know someone a little bit, because the worst thing that can happen is that you are starting to work with someone, get advice from someone, and having the beginning of this mentorship, and then you realize, damn it, this person's a dick. And I don't want to continue to interact with them. So always make sure, never go straight in for that. Make sure there's someone you actually want to work with. Doesn't matter how big of a name they are. You could have someone that's really big name who will be like, yeah, I'll, look at that or help you with this thing. And you find out, you just go there and you didn't know anything much about them other than, what's out there on the internet and that public persona. And you start, finding that hey, this person's super misogynistic or whatever. And you're like, I now don't care about any of your advice, but you are such a big name that I don't want to, anger you and cause problems with myself. So just always make sure that the person you're talking to is someone you actually want to work with on a personal level. But at Dragon Con this last year, realized I had, I was managed to get onto a couple of panels, and I had some people that had been on those panels that like came to the bar, came to talk to me and everything. At one point we were sitting there, and I was sitting there, and David was there, and a lot of authors that have been published a lot longer than me and are a lot currently a lot more successful than I am. I'm looking at them, I'm watching them look around the table, and I'm watching them look at me the exact same way they were looking at them. And as someone who's only been published maybe about, I think it's 6 years this year, been a fully published author, and who is a lot of times the youngest published author at the table most of the time. It was this moment of like, holy crap, like they look at me as like on the same level as them, because to them it's just published authors. And it's one of those where it's like I really started to kind of take my position a lot more seriously in the way up and coming writers will look at me and be like, I need to approach this as someone who will be actually looked at and listened to by these authors, and not like I'm still on the trying to get published thing. I think that was like a hurdle I jumped over this last year, and it's great, but it's also in a way it's like it's pressure where it's like I need to make sure that I'm not doing anything, saying anything that can be detrimental to these new authors, the way I wouldn't have wanted anyone to have said something that I would have clung on to that would have been detrimental to me as I was trying to get published.
Nice.
I wanted to jump in and just parse that a little bit more finely, what you just said, Alexander, about the person and not working with them. There's a difference, though, I would say, between going to somebody for advice and going to somebody and establishing a mentor-mentee relationship. Because I've gotten a lot of good advice from people that I really can't stand, who are absolutely terrible, terrible people, from my perspective, but they're really successful at this, that, or the other thing. And so I want to get that bit of knowledge from them. So asking them a specific question is a lot different from, getting into the long-term one-on-one with them.
Absolutely.
Which I fully agree with you. You don't want to lock yourself into something like that. But ask anybody any question you want to ask them.
If they're bad people, absolutely use them. Use them as much as you can.
Well,
you also said something, Alexander, that every time I'm on a panel with Mr. Nettles there, it's brought up tenfold, and that is, and we do a lot of this on this show too, that at some point you have to realize what you're in this for, and is it to be in the business, or is it to be just be a writer and have it as a hobby, which is I am selfishly pimping out the show that was done last week on this show, This Week in Indies, which was talking about the difference between hobby and business, but which was a great show that Madeline did. Everybody go check that out. But there is that pivot point when you realize that, and I think also the mentoring aspect of that changes for you as well, because then you realize that your approach is going to be different at that point, right? You're going to if you're looking at it as you're in this for the business, then you're giving business advice for the most part, not the oh, well, how do you start writing? You start writing. That's how you do it. That's how you write, right? I mean, even that's even a part of the business aspect of it a little bit, but still there is a little bit more inside baseball, if you will. You talk a little bit more shop in the aspect of creating when you're doing your business persona than you do if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. And when you're giving advice to other authors, like new authors, as a business persona, you have to have a little patience when you're giving that advice too, because they don't always get that part. It's like, they just think of it as, oh, the love of the work and all that, and they don't realize they have to put the work into the marketing part of it as well.
Well,
So yeah, patience is required in a lot of cases.
well, and I mean, the publishing side is one piece of my life, right? It is just one piece of everything that I do. But it's, and I sort of apply the same principles to everything I do, which is if I don't enjoy the work, you better be writing me a big check. But, even so, it's remembering there's a difference between the business side of whatever you're doing and then the actual work itself and what you're doing and delivering. And, if you don't look at this as a business, then you really do have a hobby. I mean, no matter, even if you're making a lot of money at it, you're probably either leaving a lot on the table or you're blowing a lot in places, because really business is nothing more than a methodology and an approach. There's a whole lot of different ways to approach it, but it's a methodology approach. And then last, kind of the mindset. It's the belief about what am I doing with it, right? Mm-hmm. And the one thing I'll say is this: is we're talking about mentors and providing guidance and experience and all these sorts of things. The best line I ever got from Dad in terms of that was the idea that experience is what you have about 30 seconds after you need it. So if you've got the opportunity to learn from other people's mistakes, do that.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'll agree with Jim on the if I don't like doing it, it better be a big check. Also, on that note, Alexandra Gideon can absolutely be bought on almost everything. If there's something you want me to do, let's talk money. Like I almost guarantee you, there's a amount on a check you can write, and you can get me to do it.
Oh my God!
And I have coupons for it. Alex can be bought cheap.
And you know what? That price may actually be lower than you want it to be. I think what I was saying. If you're going to be on that like longer term relationship, kind of parse that out, like with Adam, I think, if you're on the mentoring side as well, I've seen, and it's something that I have been guilty of. I've seen other people be guilty of as well. It's just wanting to kind of blanket help everyone and really just like jump in so many. And me as someone who wants to, pay it forward from, the mentors that I've had to, newer people, it's something that I've had to learn much more to come back on. And it's really, if you're looking to possibly mentor someone, make sure that you're getting to know them. And even in that case, and even if you're just giving some advice on like a one-shot basis, get to know what the person's goals are a little bit. Because like I said, in that position, and especially now when we've been published for a while and everything, and you're around all of your colleagues and everyone else is published, and like you start to, after a time, kind of forget what it's like when you're like first starting out and everything, and like and the way they can hang on every word you say because you're published and you're where I want to be. And it's making sure that I feel that we have a duty to do at least a little bit of work to make sure we're not going to give advice and that kind of thing that may be detrimental to this person that's just starting out. And it's making sure is that if you're giving all this advice as if this person is looking to be a full-time author and, jump feet first, and they are, super happy in their career, never going to leave it, just want to put out a book every couple of years and, enjoy the thing, your advice may be shit for them. Like that's not what they're looking for, not what they need at all. And just a little bit of talking of like, hey, like, how do you want to publish? What are you looking for? And even that conversation can be them going, oh, I didn't realize there was differences, which is itself something that they have now learned from your conversation. And it's just really making sure that you're knowing the person you're talking to at least a little bit and knowing those goals, that you can give them the best advice. And if you're not the best person for them, we all know someone who will be. And you can just be like, oh, hey, with what you're looking to do, it's not really what I do. Jim, Adam, Anita over here, much better to talk to than me. Let me go introduce you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you brought in Pay It Forward, because, Heinlein is probably my all-time favorite author. And that was, a big thing for him. Pay it forward, always pay it forward. So, and that really is kind of the heart of the mentor relationship, because you're paying it forward to the next people.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and people have that. There's so many people that have that like competition, like, oh, if I give them this, they'll be popular. And I'm like, I want to mentor someone that gets really big, because you know what they're gonna do? They're gonna be interviewed, and they're gonna go, oh, Alexandra Gideon gave me this amazing advice and really helped me, and people are gonna go, oh, who's he? And they're gonna come buy my shit. So it's all marketing. It's all marketing ploys, guys. It's literally the entire premise of Falstaff books.
Well, and I mean, going back to the idea that there's an interesting idea is between the difference between teaching, mentoring, and when you get into consulting and coaching and management and that side of things, right? And the question is, a lot of the time, where do you fall on that? Because teaching is literally I'm going to push knowledge your way, do with it what you want. Mentoring is this is largely where, to me, it moves into that bi-directional thing of part of the benefit out of mentoring is not just the self-promotional aspects that Alex is going to work. It's also, what are the questions somebody asks? What are the ways that somebody else is looking at a problem, a question, an issue that may cause me to look at something I haven't looked at previously? Or maybe the thing that I go and say, shit, I hadn't even heard about that. Let me go dig into that, and I'll give you an opinion. Because no matter what, there's two things to this. Even though once you become a writer, it feels like everybody you know is somehow or another a writer. It's really a very small community. And it's a very small community with a very shared experience. It's just everybody has a different level of experience, and what are they experienced in. And that's why those mentoring, that networking, that building the friendships and the relationships and the business relationship and all this sort of stuff is just like any other, realistically, any other business is, how do I make these relationships to make all this stuff work?
All right. Jim just killed the room.
All right, I can leave now. Oh, wait.
It's funny. I was just thinking about, like, I've had, like, pseudo roundtable conversations where there's a bunch of really experienced authors or filmmakers or wherever I've been at, artists just sitting around a table talking, and like the new person comes in and you immediately get that new car smell from that person. And then they sit down for like 3 seconds and the fear in their eyes just grows and grows and grows. And it's just like, it's interesting how you recognize that as you get, through, you keep going. And as Alexander said, I believe in Adam, I think also said this, that you have to be careful about remembering that you were that person at that point, and kind of tailoring it back a little bit. Do you guys recognize that now? Do you see that when you guys are talking amongst yourselves, or is it just the conversation just takes you away and poor little cub that's got their fear in their eyes, but hey, look, maybe they need to hear this anyway.
I'm just a bull in a china shop.
I had a feeling that was that comment was coming for you.
But usually I figured it was coming from one of y'all. So
a lot of times,
I'm Angle.
If I'm in a group like that, especially if I've like brought someone in that is a new writer and that kind of thing, I try to sit back and know and watch, see where conversations going, that kind of thing, especially for the new writers. Someone that I've seen their work, I think can be really fantastic and really get something out of it. I always like to try to make sure that I can work them into the conversation, because I know they're going to sit there and they are scared shitless to say something, especially with some of the people that they may be sitting there with. And it's really just, directing some questions, that kind of thing, just so that they can, to get them talking, to get them opened up. Because for most of us, I know, at least for me, I tend not to try to bring anyone, over to someone that I myself wouldn't want to spend time with, and I know isn't someone who wouldn't be accepting and that kind of thing. It's really just getting them to kind of open up and talk and everything. And I almost always try to never make those moments about writing, because it's about who you know and whether or not they like you. And if you are sitting down with someone for the first time, yeah, we can talk about writing, like if it's coming up, but the best thing to do is try to work it in to make that person like you, make them laugh, make them, when you're around, not be like, oh shit, this person's coming. They're just going to be here quiet and staring at me and it's going to be weird. Like, no, you want people to want you around because they like you as a person. Because when people like you, they do things for you. And it's really, it's helping newer people get over that like shyness and that, starstruck. But, to remind myself, I think back about the first moment I can think of at Con Carolinas. And it was my first panel that I'd ever gone to, at a convention. I'm sitting there by myself. And I was there because of magicalwords.net. So I was really there mostly to meet David, Misty Massey, and Faith Hunter. But I'd read Gail Martin's books for a long time. And she was on the first panel that I went to. It was like first thing, it was like a 4:00 panel. We're sitting there and she's talking. And then at one point someone yells up at Gail. Just yells something. I don't even remember what it was. Everybody laughed. I turned around and David and Faith were sitting behind me. And I just remember going, I was not ready for them to be behind me. And I just think back to that because like the relationship I have with them now as opposed to there. And I've got it. And like, it's a good reminder of like, that's where I was. That was my first time seeing them in person as opposed to now. And I think it's a good just kind of ground you into what the experience for the new people will be like.
And while writers aren't entirely human, they do put on the skin suit now and then.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I don't have a really clever segue. It's just been so I'm just going to go, here's your indie connection. Let down your hair and enjoy this Rapunzel-like tales of indie books that are like the Princess of Souls. And see?
Hey guys, C.O. Caden here from Fiction Atlas Press, bringing you another Indie Connection. Today I'd like to tell you about some indie books that you might enjoy if you're a fan of Princess of Souls by Alexandra Christo. The first book I have for you is called Of Earth and Flame by Eliana R. Galea. She refuses to be bound to anyone. He's trying to find freedom. Eliana is the king's pet. She has lived her entire life in a tower, waiting for the day she'll be forced to marry his son. When that day arrives, she has a plan. Armed with her daggers and her desire for freedom, she runs from the king and his deadly power. Xander has spent his entire life on the run. He doesn't need anyone or anything, certainly not a mate. But when his path crosses with a feisty elf, nothing will ever be the same again. He has secrets to keep. She wants to leave Ithenmire behind and not look back. Fate has other plans for them both. The second book I have for you is called Body of Chaos by Nicolette Beebe. Instead of magic hair, Ripley has magic blood. Ripley Griever has been locked away for 21 years, afraid of what the world would do with her unpredictable magic. But when Fletcher Darkly breaches the walls of her tower to rescue her, she breaks her mother's loyalty to save him from her grips. Now they must escape through treacherous terrain and malevolent creatures to reach the kingdom of Elizzy to fix her magic before the Sidorous hunters capture her for her blood. But as she journeys through the dangerous Olden lands, she begins to realize that Fletcher's help may come at a steeper price than she may be able to pay. The third book I have for you is called Towering Future by Abigail Manning. It's been over 20 years since the princess of Sabetta mysteriously vanished from her fallen kingdom. Many assumed the princess was slain alongside her parents, but the king of Ashbourne seems to harbor more information than he's let on. Living entirely oblivious to the scarring caused by her home kingdom of Ashbourne, the sorceress Elle dreams of exploring the world beyond the walls of her tower. With a magic gift as dangerous as her own, she understands the king's reasoning for keeping her tucked away. After all, seeing the future can prove to be rather powerful when a war between kingdoms is brewing. As tensions build between Ashbourne and the other kingdoms of the realm, Prince Mirren seeks an opportunity to prove himself useful before his father selects his heir. Knowing his father has some sort of insight into the future, Mirren explores the king's forbidden tower to investigate. When his unexpected arrival startles a vision out of Elle, a terrifying future intertwines them both. Can Elle learn the truth behind her past while battling her predetermined future? Or will Ashbourne's strength prove to be too much to stand against? And the last book I have for you is called Between Blades and Braids by Marilla G. Barbosa. She's a noble who never leaves her house. He is a pirate who's been all around. Can they save each other's lives without falling in love? Nalim Rapunzel is the daughter of the most influential noble in the city. She has everything she could wish for, except freedom. The enemies of her country want her dead for her unique ability to look into the future in her dreams. Unable to leave the palace's gates for almost 10 years, she wishes she could get rid of her gift and have a normal life. Katsu, on the other hand, used to be a pirate and go wherever the wind would take him. But after the crew's retirement, he's been stuck in the same city for a year. To alleviate his stress, his brother suggests he travel a little. So why not visit a nearby country for a festival? Both lives changed completely at an unlikely meeting that leads to a chain of events bringing them closer together. And when she sees him dying in a dream, can she save him? Or will he risk his life to save hers? Okay, that's all for me this week. I'll see you next week on the Indie Connection. Bye!
Another great indie connection, some beautiful covers, some interesting stories. If you're a fan of fairy tale retellings, I think this is a really good one for you. So check those books out if you want to add to your TBR. There's plenty of books here amongst this panel to add to your TBR as well. So let these guys know how much you appreciate them being here and buy their stuff. Make them more money. I think that's
please
today.
Yes.
Yeah.
All in favor?
So I wanted to finish up our conversation by talking about. I don't want to go through like the best advice you got, but what has been an instance in which you've run across a mentor or a mentoring situation that became helpful for you. It could either be on either side too. If you were being mentored or if you're mentoring someone and you learn something, because I think that was a very apt point about, every time that you're giving advice or you're talking to somebody about stuff, listening to them and discovering, hey, they know this one site that you didn't know about before. You're always learning, you're always capturing things. So I'm curious, what has been your best moment in this relationship of mentoring? It can be a bragging moment too. I don't care.
Well, I had several mentors in poetry with a group called Mindful Poetry. And they introduced me to poetry forms. Like before that, I had only done haiku as far as a poetry form, and I'd just been writing free verse. So they taught me the poetry forms, how to do them, how to improve on them. So that was very helpful in improving my poetry. And I'm very grateful for that.
That's awesome. So you were just doing free form and you didn't even know it before?
Well, no, I was doing free verse. I mean, I knew that there were poetry forms out there, because I was reading Shakespeare poems and stuff. So I knew about sonnets and things. I just didn't know how to write them. And I really had no interest in writing them at that point until this group introduced me to the poetry forums, and I'm going, wait a minute, you can do really cool things with these forms. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a similar experience where I was mislabeling what I was writing as either haiku or this or that. I mean, haiku is different. Haiku is very rigid, but
Yeah.
free verse versus other aspects of poetry, and so
Yeah.
oh no, that's not free verse. That's this. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, haiku is very interesting because you've got the traditional Japanese haiku, which is vastly different than what the Americans and the Western world does with haiku. So yeah, so we're sort of bastardizing the haiku over here, but
As we do so well with everything else.
Absolutely.
I don't know. I think the one thing I would probably throw out there is, in terms of experience and in terms of the whole mentor-mentee relationship and all the rest of these things, is you never know the collection of somebody's experience and knowledge. But things that what happens is, over time, things that we make an assumption about, that we go and say, well, everybody in the business knows that, and that is just a basic of the business. We have to remember that was something we still had to learn at some time as well. And I would say probably part of the reason I'm throwing this out there is I've got somewhere we're working with, trying to wrap up the next phase of a project with, that doesn't always take those lessons away, despite the fact they may have been given them repeatedly. And the hardest thing sometimes is to select what are the lessons that there's just certain aspects of the business we have to know and we have to adapt to, and just say that's just part of the nature of the business, versus the idea that we have to remember that something that we can say, as simple as saying that Word and .doc files are the industry standard, is something that somebody who's just coming in may not know, and something that is inherent to us, and something that is just by nature of the business, doesn't necessarily sink in that something as simple and as fundamental as that is something that you may have to reinforce repeatedly with a hammer. But that's neither here nor there. But I mean, again, it's that idea that things that we take for granted because we all go and say, oh yeah, that's the standard. How can you not know that? It's still something that we had to learn. And by knowing how people do or don't learn and adapt to information, and how they integrate it and how they make it part of how they do everything, is really important, both to know whether or not a mentoring type relationship will work, or how to respond to people's questions, or to know whether or not you can ask them a question and the answer you'll get is going to be useful.
Adam, Alexander, you guys want to go?
One of the best things that I've gotten that really showed that it is, my mentoring, being mentored, has paid off for me, was a review I got for this book back in 2020 when it released. It's a long review, but the part that really got me, so, of course, Web of Crimson is historical fantasy, features Aleister Crowley as the main character. And there's just this part in the review, and it said, solid story, amazing character. I'm looking forward to seeing how the author is going to intertwine reality with fiction. The story mix of reality and fiction is reminiscent of D.B. Jackson's Thief Taker series, which melds revolutionary Boston with an historic urban fantasy wizard. Not bad company to be in. It is not bad company to be in at all, because D.B. Jackson is the other pen name of David Coe. And so having that come in as, someone comparing my work, in the same genre to his, and like seeing that there is a comparison, and that it is, something they could even, talk about my work in the same breath as his work that I love so much. It was just really special to me, and really, showed that I am going to the places that I want to go.
I love that we just did 3-act structure within a show. That's fantastic. We had a foreshadowing of David Coe, and then he exalted at the end. Fantastic stuff, man. I love that. You just made my morning.
the
Follow
meta
that, Adam.
experience.
Go ahead.
So, as I've been saying, you can get your mentoring from anywhere, and listening, remembering to listen to what people are saying, and actually listening, not preparing for what you're going to say next, not thinking of how you're going to respond, but actually listening to what they're saying is a huge thing. The problem with that for me is that once it gets into my head, I tend to forget where it necessarily came from, or when, or, it's in there. It gets incorporated. So I'll actually throw out something that I do, and I tell people, and as I'm encouraging other authors to, get out there and, do this, it gets to what I said earlier, if you don't ask, they can't say yes. The answer to any question that you don't ask is always going to be no. So go out there and ask. I asked the convention, hey, how do I get in? And they turned around and offered me a featured guest spot. Okay. So, I asked Kevin, hey, how do I, I can help you with this. Okay. Asking, get out there and put yourself out there and say, hey, I can do this. Do you want me to do it with you? What's the worst that happens is they say, no, I'm all set, right? Mm-hmm. The best that happens is they say, yeah, I want to be part of it. I want you to be part of this. And you're, either way, your growth continues.
See, and I love when my panel's very, very smart, because you took my exact answer I was going to say, Adam, about listening. So that's fantastic. I love it. That's great.
What, Joe?
I'm going to expand on your answer, though, a little bit. And I'm going to say, don't be afraid of the no's. Don't be afraid, because a no can turn into a yes, because somebody might remember you if you had offered something and they'd say, no, I don't need it right now. But maybe later down the road, hey, that person asked me about that and I need this right now. Maybe I should reach out to them and see if they're available to do that. That happens. It happens a lot, oftentimes. I worked on a lot of films where I was doing this or doing that. It wasn't not necessarily what I wanted to do, but I did it just to be on the film set or to be a part of the production. And somebody remembered that I did that. And I asked them if I could do this, and they said no. And then they said, well, I have this next, they come to me 4 or 5 months down the road when I totally forgot I even asked them, because I don't remember my name half the time past, 5 minutes ago. So, but I asked them, and they said no at the time, but then they said, hey, I've got this other production and I need this role. And you said that you would do it for the last one. You were still interested in doing it, And so no's can turn into yeses as well. So don't be afraid. The whole thing is to ask, and whatever response you get, it's never the end of that response most of the time, so.
If you really want to get somewhere, your answer is always yes, and then you figure out how to make it happen after you say that.
Yeah, my wife goes through life saying yes to things and then figuring out if she can do it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Say yes first.
Yeah. Don't think about it. Be about
My
it.
wife is saying yes to things and then freaking out that I said yes to things.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, she said yes to this, and 2 weeks ago she was at MIT giving a talk. Yes, absolutely, just okay.
Mm-hmm. And also, no can a lot of times translate to I don't know you.
Yeah.
It's not really you're not what I'm looking for or not good enough for this thing. It's I don't know you and trust you to do this thing. Whereas it can become yes once they do. So again, get to know people. Be likable.
Well, and absolutely. It again goes back to that idea of sometimes no is because I need the people I know and I trust now to make this happen.
Mm-hmm.
Or you came in at the wrong time. You might come in at the time when they've already filled all the roles.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
it's just like publishing. No, getting a rejection. I mean, this is a business of rejection, right?
Mhm.
No doesn't mean you suck. No could mean I just don't have any slots open. No could mean it could mean not right now. It could mean I need to know who you are before I'm going to trust you with something that big. But yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. A lot of times I've given people, all right, can you go try this side project? Let's see where that goes. If you go somewhere, great. We'll make things happen. I mean, and that's an opportunity for both sides to go and say, does this work? Does it not? Because at the end of the day, everything about this business, even the fun stuff, is still work. And you got to be ready to know, are you willing to do the work, and what approach are you willing to take to do the work to make those things happen? And so take your shot. I mean, because again, no is not going to kill you. And sometimes yes will mean, what the hell did I just agree to? And I'm pretty sure the side of my urn before it gets fired out of a cannon will say, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
I mean, it's how this series came to be. John Hartness came to a writing retreat that I was at, talking about the Shadow Council archives, and said, I'm surprised no one wants to write Aleister Crowley. And I said, I'll write Aleister Crowley. He said, give me a synopsis for the first 4 books. Like you said, send them to me. I had them to him 2 weeks later. Never even thought about writing that series, but I saw that moment of like, oh, he'll publish this? Yes, we're full speed ahead, and you gotta just jump on those chances.
And I will tell you that action puts you ahead of 99.9% of everybody else that pitches an idea and then doesn't do a damn thing with it. I mean, the reason I'm in that book right there is because I know Josh. Josh is a friend, and he was going, hey, I need another couple of contributors, and I pinged him. I said, what are you looking for? And he goes, all right, will you send me something? I said, sure. What do you want? He goes, just give me something different. And the smart ass in me went and said, okay, I'm going to pitch how Dune, since we're talking Frank Herbert, here's how Dune was fairy folklore. And he goes, there's no way. Well, it's in the book.
Nice plug.
I thought it was well done.
Why don't you finish the plugging and tell everybody where they can find you, Mr. Nettles?
Well, the easiest way to find me is go to jamespnettles.com. That'll link you to most of the me's. That'll take you to authoressentialsworkshops.com. That'll take you to the Speculative Fiction Academy.com. That'll take you to creatingprose.com. That'll take you to the continualconvention.com, of which I think everybody but Anita's been on, and I haven't roped her in yet, but I'm still trying. Where we do shows and stuff like what you see over here. And in terms of kind of that mentor and just opportunities, doing shows like this and getting to know people like Joe and whatnot is how you make a lot of these things happen.
Awesome. All right, Mr. Gideon.
So you guys can find me right down here at alexandergideon.net. Give me a bit. My site is not up right now, so that will be coming back up. But you'll be able to find links to all of my social media, links to all of my books, sign up for my newsletter, which will be starting back up starting in June, with a lot more info that's coming. I'll be hopefully having a Patreon starting within the next few months. A lot of new content coming at you guys, so really stay tuned there, pay attention, and hopefully you'll buy something for me.
Mr. Gaffen?
So you can find me right down here, Linktree Gaffen620. That takes you to everything. Basically, it takes you to the website, which is CassidyChronicles.com. And there's always one of my books on sale there for half price. It changes from month to month. You can also find me on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just look for Adam Gaffen because there's only one of me. I have been roped into Jim's Continual. Actually, I'll be back on there recording on Tuesday. And yeah, pre-order the new book. Got a new Cassidyverse book coming out, a collection of short fiction that comes out on June 13th. Going to be The Heart of Space. So
Everybody go check that out. As you should be checking out Go Nina because you're here. So congratulations, you found us. Thank you so much for doing so. Smash the like button, do the subscribe thing, all that wonderful stuff. And I wrote some stuff. It's out there. Go check it out. And yeah, just come and hang out with us. We've got a lot of great stuff coming up. Tomorrow we've got the Battle of Nemesis as Mr. David Green will have the green room going. He's got Karina Cantus and Catherine Sweet competing in the green room, and right behind him, right after that, Indie Mayhem tournament's winding down. Everybody, we will add an 8th member to the semifinals, and one of those 3 gentlemen there will be one of those members. So definitely check that out. And then later in the week, they'll all be chatting again, competing on Thursday for your attention, as the green room will have their chat, and then right after that, Indie Mayhem will have their chat, and I have my chats every Friday about the multiverse, in which this week I have the awesome Darren Kennedy and Sean Hillman joining me. Sean is the game room track director at Multiverse, so we're going to talk about gaming. So if you're an RPG guy or a game guy, you like card games or even Mario Kart, they have a Mario Kart tournament at Multiverse, which we'll talk about there as well. So we'll be talking about that, and Darren Kennedy, who is a vendor extraordinaire and an amazing author in his own right, and we'll be talking to him about that as well. So come and hang out with us Friday night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the Multiverse thing. I don't have the graphic because I'm just got so much going on. I didn't make the graphics, so I apologize for that. But enough of me yapping. It's time to give it all up to the one and only A.F. Stewart. Miss Stewart, take it away. It's all yours.
Hi, I'm here to talk to you about the Hayward and Anderson Consulting Detective Series. This is my goof on Sherlock Holmes and Watson. Basically, it involves 2 paranormal investigators in a steampunk-esque London. And there's a running joke in the series about her being the rival of Sherlock Holmes. And so the characters are Elspeth Hayward and Lars Anderson. Lars is Norwegian, Elspeth is British. And basically, they get involved in weird cases involving paranormal creatures like ghosts, vampires, eldritch horror, headless corpses, and various other things like that. The first story is The Ghostly Tower. It's available for free on Story Origin with a newsletter sign up. And the second story just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's called Shadow and Scarlet, and it involves vampires. And I'm here to read you a little tiny piece from the story, so I'm going to start now. Lars Anderson lay in his bed ruminating on his new circumstances as a consulting paranormal investigator. Several months into the odd arrangement, Elspeth Hayward surprised him. Despite her volatile mood, she often provided good company and conversation when not engaged in their detective work. Even that aspect Lars found tolerable, as it tickled his private fascination for the supernatural. Granted, he also had a healthy dose of fear for such things, but one must be prudent with safety. Still, the position offered him excellent accommodations, coupled with a growing fondness for English sausages. And Elspeth's wonderful brandy smoothed over the rough patches, not to mention Willoughby's excellent pickled herring and gravlax. Lars's mouth watered at the thought. Allowing himself a few more luxuriating minutes in bed before rising, he continued pondering his good fortune while dressing. Life in London is far better than Norway. I can handle this detective business, and managing Elspeth's finances is decidedly more interesting than working at my father's dreary accounting firm. After reviewing her situation, it became obvious why she entrusted him with her accounts despite his previous embezzlement woes. She had practically no capital, with most of the bills paid from her monthly parental stipend and their sporadic consulting fees. Creative accounting was often necessary, especially since his own ill-gotten gains were now tied up in investments. When suitably attired, Lars wandered into the sitting room for breakfast. Elspeth's screech greeted him, assaulting his ears like the call of a sick seagull. Curse that damnable Sherlock Holmes! Elspeth Hayward tossed the latest copy of The Strand across the room before turning to glare at her partner. Why does he always get the glory, Anderson? Why? We've been doing an equally admirable job in our business. And are the news hounds lining up at our door? No. Lars sighed, pointedly ignoring the question, and remained silent on the matter. He knew from recent experience that engaging his volatile business partner on the topic of Holmes only aggravated the situation. His unfortunate snub of her soured any esteem of the man and spawned a minor obsession. It's because he keeps mum on the truth, you know, pretends none of his cases have paranormal causes, abetted by his partner in lies, Watson. But we know better, don't we? Elspeth stared directly at Lars, and he gulped, hastily nodding, before sitting and occupying himself with pouring a cup of tea. Elspeth abruptly shouted, "Willoughby!" Her shrill voice snapped against attention. Lars flinched and nearly choked on his tea. He winced, ducking his head to hide the grimace. It wouldn't do to have her turn her ire on him, not this early in the morning. He looked up when the clang and hiss of their automaton manservant entered the room. "Yes, ma'am? Did you need something?" Willoughby's head creaked in a silent nod and waited. Oil dripped out of one ear, and Lars made a note to check the automaton's fittings later. Elspeth scowled. "Can you rid me of that pompous poser of a detective, Sherlock Holmes, and his fabricating fool of a partner?" "No, ma'am." Willoughby's left pinky twitched, but he showed no other sign of consternation. Elspeth sighed. "Then bring me a brandy, and one for Lars as well, with some eggs and sausage for his breakfast." "Very good, ma'am." Willoughby clanged a retreat. "Why am I so put upon?" Elspeth sighed dramatically. "Beset with that horrid man's exploits. He gets his name in the papers, and we haven't had a case in over a fortnight." "You should not get aggrieved over the stories in the papers," Lars ventured, emboldened by the thought of brandy. "Enjoy our leisure time." "Enjoy it! How can I enjoy anything with Holmes taking all the cases?" Elspeth glared. "You're not taking his side, are you, Anderson?" "Of course not," Lars sputtered. "But he's not doing it deliberately. That is a bit harsh, yes?" "No," Elspeth hissed. "Sherlock Holmes is a ridiculous farce." Lars straightened his shoulders. "Now that is not reasonable." Throwing caution away, he continued, "Herr Holmes gets the job done. He's hardly a poser, and Herr Watson may occasionally leave out details or obscure certain facts, but he's not fabricating their adventures. He's most likely trying not to pander to the ghoulish. No one wants another ghost riot." "You're right, I suppose." Elspeth flopped against her chair cushions. "Public sentiment isn't favorable to paranormal goings-on, not after the unhallowed wars." Elspeth sighed. "But he always seems to get the renown. We've had cases just as interesting these past months, and no one at the papers is banging on our door to publish our exploits. It isn't fair that he gets all the accolades. I'm not some fly-by-night fool, you know." "No." Lars drew out the word before he added, "It's not fair." Then he mumbled just below earshot, "But I suspect your father makes certain you never get into the papers." Elspeth frowned at him. "What was that? Speak up, man." Lars hastily cleared his throat. "My apologies, Froken. Miss Howard." He stumbled over the name, still getting used to English phrases, but he was remembering most of the time. "I was saying how you were right, that some of our cases should have made the papers." Elspeth looked mollified. "Indeed, I felt at least the case of the dastardly hellhound would have sparked interest, but nothing." She sniffed. "They're jealous." The return of Willoughby with the brandy and food cut off any further discussion. "Apologies for the tardiness, ma'am, but there's been a telephone call. It seems that Miss Scarlett Lejeune wishes to engage our services as a detective. I took the liberty of making an appointment in half an hour." Elspeth let out a squeal of delight. "Did you hear that, Anderson? Scarlett Lejeune herself as a client. Perhaps this will be the case that garners attention." Lars sipped his brandy and tried not to sigh as he enjoyed his breakfast. Who in the world was Scarlett Lejeune? And that's a little taste of Shadow and Scarlet from the Hayward and Anderson Consulting Detective Series. And remember, it's always time to go indie now.